Hi everybody, welcome to HobTech Cars. Today I'm going to be spraying a TTE spoiler for a Toyota Auris. This fits the Mark 1 Auris. That's the Auris that goes from 2007 to about 2012. This spoiler is not a genuine TTE spoiler, it's a fiberglass replica which came from Greece. As such, it does have some minor blemishes in it. If it was the genuine model from Toyota in Germany, it would be plastic, not fiberglass. But I mean, it's made from the exact mold of the genuine TTE spoiler. And as such, when it's fitted to the car, it will be pretty much identical. I'm going to be sanding this spoiler, getting it ready for paint prep because of the blemishes in the fiberglass finish. Then I'm going to give it a few coats of primer, probably a light sanding again, and give it the main coat of paint. And then once that's dry, I'm going to lacquer it, and then we'll get it onto the car and see how it looks. So naturally, no one wants to watch me sand for about 20 minutes, which is what I'm doing here. So I'm using between 500 and 800 grit to remove some of the rough surface blemishes from the surface of the spoiler to get a nice smooth finish for the paint that's coming. So with the spray painting of the primer, we're going to do 4 coats here today. That might seem like a lot, but if you want to do it correctly, this is the best way to do it. I'm going to apply a tack coat first, which is a very thin layer of primer onto the sanded surface of this spoiler. Every layer that I apply is going to be very thin, and I'm going to leave it to dry between each coat. The primer that I'm using today is an acrylic white primer. It's from the Simoniz brand. It's available in most auto factors and DIY shops, Woodies, B&Q, Halfords, yada yada, etc. I've used it for all of my spraying in the past, and I find it an excellent primer product. So this is a time-consuming process. We're going to wait about 15 minutes between each coat for it to dry, and then apply the next coat, wait 15 minutes, and again until we've done that 4 times. Technique is important here. I'm going to leave up the footage of me spraying this primer to give an idea to folks what sort of distance the nozzle of your spray can should be away from the spoiler, or likewise if you're using a spraying gun, the same theory would apply. So I'm just going to leave it here for a moment and show you how I layered up those primers. At this stage, I've done 4 coats of primer. Now I'm just using a flashlight to check for any blemishes, some small bubbling that might have occurred, or hairs, things like that that get stuck into the paint. An LED flashlight like this is good to check for these things. When I identify them, I sand them out with 1000 grit sandpaper to make sure that we end up with a really nice finish in our primer. So after 4 coats of primer, including a very light sanding, this is what the surface of the spoiler looks like. It looks excellent. It pays to be patient with these jobs, do them right, and you'll have an eventual paint finish that's going to last years. So we have the primer done, and now we can move on to the main part. I've gone this morning and I've got the paint mixed up for the spoiler. It is this Toyota 1G3 color code. You're wondering why there's a -1 there. It is actually because there are 4 different color codes of this type for different years of Toyota cars. So there's 4 different shades, and the -1 is the one that was color matched to my card in the dealership notebook. So let's get spraying. Like the primer, this is a first coat and it's a tack coat. So we're just putting a very light layer of paint onto the spoiler to get some cohesion between the primer and the main paint. I forgot to take a summary video showing what the tack coat looks like, but as you can see in this video, it's pretty much just a light spray paint coating. So this is with the second coat done. As you can see, it looks a lot better. Patchy still, very much in spot, but compared to the first coat, there's a good even spread of paint. So I have actually gone and gotten an extra can of this because I know I won't have enough to finish this spoiler and do it correctly. So I think that's 1 litre altogether. These are 2 500ml cans, 2 400ml cans. Here we go. This is with 4 coats. It's really starting to thicken up, and that little hint of metallic flake is in the paint. There's still some patches on it there because it is drying. Once that's dried, it will even out. Right, so now I'm going to apply the lacquer, and the way I'm going to do this is I'm going to apply it in thin coats. Probably 3 or 4 coats. You never want to do your lacquer all in one go really thickly. It won't bind correctly to the paint and you'll end up with an orange peel type finish. You want your lacquer to be nice and smooth. So what I'm going to do is, I said 3 or 4 coats and give about 15 minutes between each coat and just gently layer it up, layer it up, layer it up. So with the lacquer, it's the same as the primer and the main coat. Your first layer is essentially a tack coat, a very light misting of paint over the surface of the spoiler, and the lacquer takes much longer to dry if you're not aware of that. So after doing this first tack coat, I left it about 30 to 40 minutes before applying my second coat over it. The first coat of your lacquer always looks a bit odd. I don't have any footage of what it looked like, but it kind of looks like essentially someone sneezed all over the part that you are painting. It shouldn't be a thick layer. It should be just a very light smattering. The lacquer that I'm using today is actually a mixture of Simon's lacquer for painting. Alrighty, we are finally all done. After 2 coats of the lacquer, it looks perfect. And the second coat of lacquer is a little bit thicker than the first one. Lacquers are difficult, really difficult. I've always struggled with them. Using a spray can, it is difficult to get the balance between too little and too much. For example, I've done alloy wheels before where I've used too little and you end up with a sandy type texture in your paint. I've also used too much in the past where you end up with obvious drips in the paint. This spoiler turned out pretty well. There's a few small drips in it, but it's not something that I'm too concerned about. It can be polished out or lightly sanded out of the paint later. but for the purposes of what I wanted to achieve here today, I'm very happy. There's a slight, like what we call an orange peel effect here, which is like a slight bubbliness to the surface of your lacquer. It's only really visible under a light shining down, like sunlight or a torchlight. This is caused by basically the lacquer spraying out of the can and condensing with particles into the air before it hits the paint. There's very little you can do about it when you're spraying, but again, a wet sanding here with about 2000 grit sandpaper or a T-cut polisher will take this out of it. Again, for the purposes of this today, I'm not concerned. So this is the end result. This is how it looks on the car. It's a really nice upgrade to these Aurises. A relatively inexpensive one as well. I think the spoiler came in at roughly about €120, including delivery and customs charges and everything like that. I think the paints altogether were €60. So we're looking at about roughly €180 altogether for this. The paints, I probably was overzealous on the layers of paint. Like I did 4 coats of primer and 3 to 4 coats of main paint and 2 coats of lacquer. You could skimp on these layers of paint if you wanted to, but in my experience, it's what allows an item like this to withstand frosty weather, hot weather, and general wear and tear. It's not something you want to take off and spray every year. You want it to last 20 years. So I'm just going to show here, this is what the car looked like before the spoiler went on. Nice car to work with, but it just looks a little bit naked at the back and needs a bit of a sporty lift. And as you can see then when the spoiler goes on, it really makes the car look so much better. It's just a really, really nice look on this car. So I guess that's the video. If you enjoyed it and found it helpful, please do like, comment and subscribe. Thanks a million for watching and take care. Bye bye.